Cześć, dzień dobry wszystkim. Z tej strony Gosia Pielichowska, a to jest kolejny odcinek Power Walk, podcastu w ruchu, którego partnerem strategicznym jest platforma MultiLife od Benefit Systems. Dzisiaj, moi drodzy, wyjątkowy Power Walk, bo nie jesteśmy na dworze, a jesteśmy w pomieszczeniu, dlatego że bardzo pada i byłoby to trudne, żeby przeprowadzać w takim miejscu Power Walk, ale jesteśmy w budynku symulacji medycznych Pomorskiego Uniwersytetu Medycznego, no a dzisiaj moim i waszym gościem jest profesor Janusz Jankowski, wybitny gastroenterolog, specjalista, ekspert w dziedzinie też prewencji raka, z którym porozmawiamy dzisiaj nie zarówno o profilaktyce raka przełyku, ale też ogólnej profilaktyce z podejściem holistycznym, bo takie właśnie podejście ma profesor, co dla nas jest niezwykle ważne. Ta rozmowa dzisiejsza będzie trochę inna, ponieważ będzie po angielsku, zatem ja się przełączę na język angielski i już zaraz witam się z profesorem. Hello, good morning, professor.
Good morning.
As I said once again, this Our today's guest is Professor Janusz Jankowski, world-known gastroenterologist, expert in terms of gastroesophageal reflux disease and Barrett syndrome, Barrett esophagus. We'll explain that in a second. But also, as I said, a cancer prevention expert, but with a more holistic approach regarding this topic. I'm really excited, Professor, to have you today in here, and
likewise.
Yeah, I'm honored and thank you. I'm really grateful for you accepting the invitation to Power Walk.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Thank you. Can we walk? I mean, this, as I said, today's Power Walk will be quite different because we are not outside because it's raining really heavy outside, and so we're gonna walk there and come back. Yeah, is that okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, let's go. Let's move a little bit further. So let's start maybe from answering the question, because you are a gastroenterologist, but also an expert in holistic approach to cancer prevention, holistic approach to
Yes.
health, right? You have just written a book. It's going to be published soon.
Correct. Yes, that's right.
Regarding holistic health.
It's called Holistic Health, and it's by publishers Austin Macaulay, based in Dubai and London, and it's coming out either just before Christmas or just after Christmas.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Yeah, congratulations for that book. Okay, so we're going to go to that topic as well, to holistic health and cancer prevention. But I would like to start in the very beginning. Yeah, we're going to turn around. Let's move that. So let's start from the beginning, from this esophagus and gastroesophageal reflux disease.
Yeah.
So, Jared, when you are an expert, you've published numerous amount of scientific papers, right, regarding that, and you were focusing on Barrett's esophagus, right?
Yes.
Can you explain to us, first of all, what Barrett esophagus is and how does it differ from reflux disease?
Yes,
maybe?
that's exactly. So Barrett's esophagus is a pre-malignant condition and affects a very small minority of patients with reflux disease. So if we look at the whole population of adults, so let's put children and adolescents aside, probably 35 to 40% of adults will have reflux disease.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of people who get reflux disease will just have symptomatic reflux disease. Approximately 10% of that 30 to 40%. So in other words, 10% of the whole population.
10%, it's a lot of the whole population.
Will have reflux damage in the gullet. So
okay.
That means if you have reflux disease and I look down and you've got the symptoms but you don't have the endoscopic changes, it's called non-erosive esophagitis. So you've only got the acid damage and the sensation of it,
okay,
but you've got no damage. 10% of the population will have evidence of damage in the gullet.
Okay.
The good news is for that 10% who've got the damage, most of that is completely benign. So, you know, we've talked about 30 to 40% of the population will have reflux symptoms. Of the whole population, only 10% will have evidence of endoscopic damage when I look down the gullet with an endoscope tube. And of that population, less than 1 to 2% of the whole population, so approximately a tenth to a fifth of those with endoscopic changes will have Barrett's esophagus. And that's a change where it can go on to cause cancer.
Cancer, yeah.
But even there, the change, if you have Barrett's esophagus, your chance of going on to get cancer is actually very small indeed. The main reason why we want to study it is it causes an awful lot of anxiety in the patients, an awful lot of anxiety with doctors, uncertainty about what medications you can have.
Yes,
Sometimes
exactly.
people are subjected to tests they don't need. Some people don't get the tests that they do need. So we wanted to study it to look at the best way to manage the condition and prevent that going on to cancer. And the main reason why we wanted to do that is that if you're unlucky enough to get the cancer, it's very difficult to cure it. So if
esophagus cancer.
Esophagus cancer. So if I look at the cancer of the colon, if you have your colonoscopy, the reason it's important to get it is if a cancer is picked up during colonoscopy of your large bowel, it's greater than a 95% chance you can have your colon cancer cured. So you shouldn't be afraid of it. It's a positively good thing to have. Where if you develop esophageal adenocarcinoma, by the time we diagnose it endoscopically, the chance of us being able to cure it is still under 10%.
Oh,
so that's why, although it's rare and it's uncommon, if you do develop it, the chances are it's going to be incurable by the time we find it. And then your life survival, your survival of living more than 5 years is probably about 15 to 20%.
Oh, that's a low survival rate.
And that compares with colon cancer, where your survival rate for most colon cancers is greater than 80%.
Okay. Okay, and what are the risk factors for this the esophagus cancer? You said this Barrett syndrome can develop into esophageal cancer. But what are the other risk factors to develop that?
The risk factors for Barrett's esophagus, most of them, in most cancers, there's genetic predisposition and environmental predisposition. The genetic predisposition in Barrett's esophagus is actually very rare and very uncommon. So it's unlikely. There's a few families who will have inherited colorectal cancer syndrome, which means the families will have a predisposition to getting cancer, but that's very rare. Most people who get esophageal adenocarcinoma have 4 things. Number 1, smoking. Number 2, drinking excessive alcohol. And the level of excessive alcohol is much less than most people think. We know that any level over 10 units of alcohol per week, so that's equivalent to a bottle of wine, probably 3, maximum 4 week beers a week, is excessive alcohol and will predispose you to excess cancer risk. The third risk factor is a bad diet, particularly high fatty foods, carbonated drinks, high salt diet. And the fourth and most important is obesity.
Obesity, Obesity increases the risk of several cancers.
Oh, very much so. Esophageal cancer, kidney cancer, pancreatic cancer are the 3 most common cancers that are associated with it. Now, the problem with obesity is that people can look at themselves in the mirror and thinking, actually, I'm okay. My body mass index is fine. I'm not overweight. The big problem with obesity is there are 2 sorts of obesity. What we call body obesity, where you can see the fat outside, and visceral obesity, where the fat is inside and on your organs. And it's by far the visceral obesity that's the most dangerous, because that sits around your organs, it sits under your stomach, in between your esophagus. It makes you much more likely to get gastroesophageal reflux disease, i.e. acid or bile coming up from your stomach or intestines into your gullet and burning your gullet.
And burning it. And what is the difference? I mean, because you've said that this Barrett's esophagus, it's a premalignant state. But what's the main difference between from time to time, everybody has a heartburn sometimes, right? I mean, it's not a normal condition, but from time to time, maybe in the course of a lifetime, everybody will experience that at least once. So when we can say that somebody just has a heartburn and somebody has a gastroesophageal reflux disease, like a real condition that also can contribute to development of Barrett's, right?
Okay, that's correct. So there's 3 determinants of when you should go to your doctor. So you're 100% right. Heartburn occasionally is a normal physiological variant of having large meals or lying down after exercise. That's not a problem. The 3 times you should go to your doctor is, number 1, if you get more than 1 episode of heartburn per week for several weeks. So more than once a week. So if it starts to become regularized, there's a problem there with your physiology. Secondly, if you have intermittent heartburn over many years. Okay.
Over many years.
Over many years.
Yeah.
And we would normally say a maximum of 10 years, but actually many people think actually over 2 or 3 years you should go to your doctor for a checkup. So you're not having it every day, you're not having it every week, but you're having it maybe once or twice a month or something, and that's happening for several years. You should probably get checked out then. And the last aspect, which is really important, it's what we call red flag symptoms. It's if you're noticing you're no longer swallowing your food, you feel some sticking in your food, or you're losing some weight, or you're noticing you're vomiting or feel like vomiting, or saliva's coming back up into your mouth.
Yeah, these are, as you said, red flags, right?
These are red flags, which means you should get to your doctor within 7 days, and you should be referred to a specialist within another 2 weeks.
And then what diagnostic tests then we have to do? It's a gastroscopy or other tests as well?
The gastroscopy is the main test we do, because you can take endoscopic biopsies and send them off to the laboratory, and someone can look under the microscope and 100% prove that you've got a benign or a malignant condition. But there's other radiological tests which help to screen people, so they can look to see if there's any narrowing in the gullet. So that might mean a barium swallow. More technically advanced tests might be MRI tests or CT scan of the chest and abdomen.
Okay, so just to sum up this part, because now we'll move to the second part, so the cancer prevention and the holistic approach that you are supporting, with your work. So just to sum up that part, first of all, the genetic predispositions to develop the Barrett syndrome and the esophagus cancer are quite low, right?
Yeah,
so mostly we talk about lifestyle factors.
Absolutely.
Right?
Environmental factors that you can change and modify.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, guys, to remember for you that if you have these red flags, what Professor listed just a second ago, so when you feel that something has stuck in your esophagus, you cannot swallow anymore, something like that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this should make you go to make an appointment to your doctor. Urgently. Okay. So now.
And if you have the other symptoms like intermittent heartburn over several years, or you start to develop regular heartburn every week, you should go to your doctor for a routine appointment to get referred. Okay. To get referred. And regarding the prevention, well, you've talked about obesity, so take care of your body weight. Like what we are doing in here, it's a power walk. We encourage you to do physical activity every day, even a small amount. What you've seen in here, for example, we are in a building, but we are walking, right? Like from going up and down the stairs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were going up and down the stairs. So physical activity can be performed in any conditions, actually, wherever you are, in even really small amount, right? That's
exactly.
Good.
The evidence is that you should have at least 30 minutes of moderate exercise 5 times a week, but ideally you should have at least an hour of vigorous exercise over the whole week in addition to that. So
hour of exercise per
So moderate exercise, maybe a light sweat, slightly out of breath. A vigorous exercise might mean that you can only talk in short sentences and you're developing quite a sweat, and you only need to do 10 minutes of exercise like that a day, and you build up your hours exercise. So it might mean doing multiple press-ups, it might be doing the plank, it might be doing some squats, it might be going up and down the stairs a couple of times, and you only need to do that for 10 minutes each day. And that's enough for the hard exercise. And the reason you do the moderate and the harder exercise is it exercises different aspects. The moderate exercise is aerobic exercise, which is good for certain types of muscle fiber and is also good for your heart, where the more vigorous exercise, particularly planks and squats and press-ups, that's actually good for muscle building, which develops a different sort of muscle fiber. And muscle bulk is very important for calorie consumption and metabolism.
Yeah, exactly. Have you heard about this exercise snacks? It's like more and more studies are showing the benefits of it, right?
I do it all the time.
It's so amazing. There's like this short episodes, because physically, maybe can you explain what are the exercise snacks, right?
So when a lot of my jobs are sitting down on videos, talking to people in business meetings. Actually, I make sure that every hour I keep my smartwatch on, and I make sure that 5 minutes every hour I'm getting up in moving around. And actually the exercise snacks for me is at least 2 minutes every hour. I'm doing standing squats, I'm doing jogging in the spot. Even if I'm in a business meeting, I'll still do that. I'll just turn off my video and people can still hear I'm in the background. Maybe a bit breathless, but I'm still talking to them while I'm doing it. Then I'll put my video back on again.
Okay, that's amazing. I mean, that's amazing strategy because, yeah, like you said, like every 5 minutes, every hour, right?
Yeah, 5 minutes every hour while I'm awake.
Every hour.
And I try to stay upright for at least 12 hours every day.
Okay. Yeah, so that's important. Okay, so guys, we've summed up this first part of the interview, but right now, well, we've touched a little bit of this holistic approach, right? Because we've started talking about physical activity, but regarding this holistic approach to health that you are talking about a lot, and the cancer prevention, what are your main findings regarding what does it mean to holistically take care of yourself, take care of your health?
Yeah, so there's a couple of general principles with holistic health. Number one, it's everything in moderation. Trying not to get too, I am obsessive by nature, but it's important to try and dissipate your obsession into several different interests. And I'll come on to that in a minute. So we're not trying to turn one extreme into another extreme. We're not trying to turn someone who's what we describe as a couch potato to being an Olympic athlete. That's not feasible or sustainable for 99.9% of the population. So what we're talking about is actually making small steps. And what I would describe in percentage terms is that people think we're talking about someone who's doing 10% of what they ought to do and turning into 90%. Actually, it's more like turning someone who's doing 49% into 51%. It's a small percentage changes. As you mentioned earlier on, for example, these exercise snacks, just making sure that, okay, every time regularly you get into a healthy habit rather than an unhealthy addiction. So instead of sitting in the chair all the time, eating or drinking coffee, that you're actually regularly getting up and doing some exercise. Instead of eating, you're actually taking some exercise. And instead of drinking unhealthy things, so I like black coffee, I like drinking healthy black coffee rather than adding unhealthy full-fat milk to it when I'm doing that too. So that's the first aspect about it, is everything in moderation. The second aspect about it is that holism means not getting fixed on one food, one diet, one type of regime. There's no one answer that fits everything. And the reality is that if you go to one thing, let's just say you have your favorite diet, like people used to go into, you know, fasting or eating high meat diets. The reality is, if you keep on doing the one thing all the time, you'll get bored, you'll get disinterested, and you won't be able to keep going. So bringing in small bits of variety into your lifestyle to keep it interesting for you. So one of the things I try to do is I try to have a guest fruit of the week. If I'm going shopping with my family, I'll actually buy a fruit that I may or may not like, and I'll try it as different, just so I'm constantly exposing myself to other things.
To different experiences, right?
Different, and sometimes taste, texture is just as important as actually other aspects of your diet as well. And then the third aspect I'd say about holistic health is learning to cope with what we would describe as relapse. So let's just say I have a bad day and I start eating something unhealthy. In fact, potato chips is the one thing I'd say I've got an unhealthy addiction for. I could quite happily make a meal of eating potato chips. Let's just say I did that one day. Instead of getting down about it and thinking, oh my goodness, I've done something that I shouldn't have done, actually I just relax and think, okay, I've had a bad day, I've treated myself. But the reason you have a relapse is because you were doing something right all the other days before. So don't see relapse as being glass half empty. Try and seeing relapse as being glass half full. You had a relapse because you were doing all the right things the previous days, and on one day you had a day off, which is perfectly healthy. And I encourage people at least to have an off day once a week, so so that they feel that they can be enjoy what they're doing in their lifestyle is healthy.
Yes, exactly. And what you said about this relapse, I mean, it's totally normal, because when we are adjusted to, I mean, we are used to have some these bad habits, but they are giving us some pleasure, right?
Oh, yeah,
and
definitely.
This is quite a default mode for us to move from the place when we feel unpleasantness, right, from some pain, etc. I mean, we want to pursue the pleasure, the state of the pleasure, right, where we feel good, because we want to move from discomfort to a comfort. And these unhealthy habits that we've had are actually the ones that makes us move from that point from discomfort to comfort very quickly. So it's going to be totally normal that it's your default, because it's the easiest way to achieve that pleasure. And this will happen from time to time. As you said, this relapse, it's totally normal. But as you said, it's about not feeling guilty about yourself, but just realize that, okay, I just did it once. And what we've talked before, like to monitor that, how many times it happens.
Absolutely. Can I just say, I think you've hit on perhaps the most important aspect of our conversation, which is the psychological aspects is 90% of successful change.
Yeah.
And you've hit on the hormonal aspects that induce us to make change, particularly dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin are two very powerful hormones that we get when we're having physical, sexual pleasure, etc. And the reason that's important is that when you eat or you do something wrong that you think is wrong, actually you're getting pleasure in other ways. And instead of turning that into temporary pleasure and then feeling guilty, if you use that to reinforce the healthy habits, which is, okay, so I've now eaten something or done something, or I haven't taken exercise I'd normally do. I'm now going to plan my diary tomorrow. So I'm going to have, something healthy in my diet, which is just as good. And after a period of time, you can change the unhealthy addictions into healthy habits. And by and large, psychologists talk about the kind of 6-week or 8-week rule, which is to change from something unhealthy slowly to something healthy. Normally takes 6 to 8 weeks. So one of the things I often tell people to consider is either giving up sugar in their tea or coffee, or cutting out all salt at the meal table. And most people say they couldn't do it. And actually, I used to have sugar in my tea and coffee, and I used to have salt in almost every meal. I now take neither of them. And actually, it's amazing over a period of time, and it is weeks rather than months, of how you get used to that healthy habit over a period of time. And I'll be frank with you, if I had sugar in tea or coffee now, actually, I'm not sure I could drink it. It would taste really far too sweet for me.
Yeah.
And if I'm having salt in something now, actually it tastes unpleasant as well. So I usually find if I want something to taste differently, I'll add some maybe pepper or herbs to it as well. So you adjust your taste, and everything is possible. I would honestly say too that when you're healthy, when your habits are fixed, they actually happen very early in life. There's very strong evidence now to say that our eating preferences are fixed in the first 2 to 3 years of life, even before we go to primary school. So if you want to change something, it can't be done instantly. You don't look for instant solutions. Look for something that's sustainable over the longer term, and don't worry about relapses. Relapses is a sign you're on the right journey.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that was a really nice sentence, yeah, the last sentence. So regarding the book, you've said, it's going to be published soon. You've said that the first chapter is regarding psychology of the change.
Yes.
So as you said, it's the most important thing in that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And what are the other areas that you think that you saw that are crucial for that holistic approach? Like we've talked about physical activity, regarding diet, like we've talked as well, like healthy in general. But what you've discovered, what would you recommend in terms of eating habits in order to take care of ourselves holistically and prevent cancer?
Yeah, so the chapters in about, there's 14 chapters, but if I can just go through the main chapters. First one's about psychology. The second one is actually understanding the physiology and the science of measuring yourself. So understanding that body mass index is a rough guide, but you shouldn't interpret it obsessively, because that can make people depressed and stressed. And we need to talk about not just losing weight, we also need to talk about people who are underweight, people who have got anorexia or bulimia or ARFID, which is, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which is becoming more common. actually these people monitor and register their weight and intake very obsessively indeed. And so that can be a bad thing. So it's a question of finding the happy medium between measuring what you're doing, but not too obsessively, so it doesn't reinforce the bad obsessions within yourself. So the book talks about that. It talks about how you can look at aspects of body fat versus visceral fat. So for example, ultrasound and MRI are very accurate ways to see if you've actually got the visceral fat inside yourself. And actually there's simple ways just about your height and weight, making sure that the weight, your height versus waist measurements. So if your waist measurement is more than half of your height, that's a very good rule of thumb that you're probably overweight. It's a simple thing.
It's quite easy to remember, yeah?
Exactly. And the other thing too is that there's certain ethnic differences too. That the most BMIs are written about people from Caucasian backgrounds, i.e. Pan-Europeans, but people particularly from Asia, it could be that your BMI looks normal, but actually you're overweight because you've got to tend to have a smaller body frame. There's other people who have very high BMIs who are perfectly healthy. So if you take Dwayne Johnson, the actor, his BMI is something like 28 or 29. And his physiology, his cardiology, his muscle build is perfect because he's a bodybuilder. So he looks like he's overweight, but he's not. He's in perfect shape. In fact, because he's got so much muscle, he burns calories faster than most people do for his body weight, because muscle is very good at burning calories. Because if he's got big muscles, he produces a lot of heat even when he's at rest.
Yeah, so that might be quite, let's say, how to call it, like the disadvantage of BMI, right? Because as you said, somebody can have a higher BMI, but has lots of muscles.
You've got to interpret it. So that's kind of how you measure it. The second thing is, or I should say the third thing is about the macronutrients, making sure you've got the right balance between carbohydrates, protein and fats. And protein is generally very good for you. Having between 30 and 35% of protein intake is good. Some people who want to put on muscle take more than 35%, but the
35, it's quite a lot.
Oh, it is, yeah. Some people want to take more, but the evidence that that does you any good is very minimal indeed. But there's good food science with protein suggesting if you take creatine and branched-chain amino acids as well, that can actually help you with exercise-induced muscle build. Not all fats are bad for you. Some of them are really good, particularly the alpha-3 omegas, which are anti-inflammatory, are really, really good for you.
Yeah.
That's why taking peanut butter in the morning is healthier for you than chocolate spread, because they've got alpha-3 omegas rather than high levels of sugar, which is pro-inflammatory. Alpha-3 is anti-inflammatory. So, and then the last aspect is carbohydrate. Carbohydrate, probably most people take in their diet. And there's nothing wrong with carbohydrate in diet, but please, please, please avoid ultra-processed foods. So in other words, if it doesn't look like the food is in its natural constituent, as the way it would be found in a farm, or the way it would be found wherever the producer makes it, in other words, if it's made into something highly processed, is probably bad.
Yes, exactly. Something that you would never find in the nature, right? Exactly.
Try to avoid taking that as much. So complex carbohydrates like fruit and vegetables are positively good things to do. So that's the third aspect. The fourth aspect is micronutrients. There's certain foods which we call superfoods, which have got the macronutrients in the right ratio, but also got excellent phytonutrients. And these are extra anti-inflammatory agents. So things like selenium, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E are excellent at cutting down inflammation in the body. So if you look up superfoods, try and add one of them into your diet each day. Because they are good macronutrients and good micronutrients. Then there's probiotics, which is you add bacteria into your diet, and the evidence is you should probably have probiotics in your diet every 6 to 8 week cycles. Take them for a period of time, give yourself a 6 to 8 week gap, and then take them for another 6 to 8 weeks again. And the reason being that we know that friendly bacteria produce good hormones, good chemicals, even vitamins and minerals, which are good for the body too. So, and probiotics is something that our ancestors would have eaten very regularly as well. There's certain additives you can add. Some, I'm very interested in low-dose aspirin. Always speak to your doctor about that. But low-dose aspirin, particularly if you take it for 10 years, somewhere between 50 and 65, is known to be cardioprotective, but particularly may very well be cancer preventative too. And there's some people, probably about 40% of the population, may have a absolute contraindication to aspirin or a relative contraindication. So it's almost 40%, but 60% of people tolerate it very well. And I take a low-dose aspirin every morning. And then there's issues you mentioned about exercise. Make sure your exercise comes into 4 different categories. Make sure you do aerobic exercise. Running is slightly better than swimming or cycling. Swimming or cycling slightly better than walking. So, but having said it, all of these aerobic exercises are good for you. But do stretching too. Stretching helps to build up the muscles, increase muscle tone there too. Helps to fix your metabolism, makes you more body conscious. Also do muscle building exercise as well, which is
resistance training,
weight training. Or if you don't have any weights, you can do press ups, you can do the plank, you can do squats as well. But weight training, we're beginning to understand that weight training is probably more important than we thought it was. So try to do that, and you can do that as part of your hour of intensive exercise a week, because that makes you quite breathless. And then the 4th bit, as you get older, is balance exercise. I stand in one leg and I do squats. That's very important. As you get older, your balance subtly changes. In fact, I've even noticed that my children have said that my gait has changed. Instead of me walking straight, I now have a slight preponderance to leaning to one side. So it's all the more important, because as you get older, the risk of a fall when you're 60 versus the risk of a fall when you're 30 are very different indeed. There's probably a log order difference in major damage. So you're tenfold more likely to have a serious injury of a fall. It's still of a low risk, but nonetheless, the risk is so much greater because your reaction time is down, you're not able to protect yourself, and you're much more likely to have a much more serious injury. So that's the 4 parts of exercise there too. And then I suppose the last thing we haven't touched on is fasting.
Oh yes, exactly.
Fasting, I'm an intermittent faster. If you look at our, I'm interested in the history of the human species. And if you look at an awful lot of our genetics of how we metabolize things, this idea of us eating small regular meals throughout the day is probably a fallacy. We probably were fasting most of the time. What we found, berries, nuts, dead carcasses, we would have eaten at the time. And what we would probably do is we probably would have been fasting, making our tools, doing whatever else we were doing, and then we would go for 6 or 8 hour forages around to look for food. So I try to encourage people to eat for no more than 12-hour windows and fast for 12-hour windows. And the only snag about that number is that people think, okay, if I eat my breakfast at 7 a.m. in the morning and my last meal is at 7 p.m. in the evening, actually that's not 12 hours because you're digesting your food for an extra 2 hours afterwards. So that's actually more like 14 hours. So you should try and make sure your eating window is more like 10 hours because your last meal is going to take 2 hours to digest. And it would be wrong for us to talk about health eating without talking about the insulin obesity hypothesis. And that's what fasting is all based on. It's all based on the fact that if you're eating, your insulin's high, you're going to put on weight. And if you're fasting, your insulin's down, and you're going to actually maintain a normal body weight. And so that the listeners don't feel I'm obsessed about obesity, I'm also very cognizant of the fact of what happens with people who are underweight as well, because we don't want people to be underweight. It's important to emphasize is that people who have got eating disorders shouldn't be encouraged to do fasting. In fact, they should do the opposite. They should eat small regular meals to keep their insulin up throughout the day so that they actually help to put on some weight. Because the mortality of someone who's underweight, a BMI of 15, who's very, very thin indeed, is the same as someone who's very overweight with a BMI of 40.
Okay, So would you recommend, because you said that 3 meals are too much, right? It's so different. I mean, for me as well, as a dietitian, I recommend for adults maximum 3 up to maximum 4 meals a day, but it's too much for me as well. Like 3 meals for adults is enough. So you eat 2 meals a day?
I eat 2 meals a day, and if I'm to be frank with you, I think the 2 meals almost graze into each other. So once my eating window opens up, which is usually about 3 p.m. in the afternoon,
okay,
I'll probably eat continuously with snack. I'll eat a main meal, and then I'll probably eat snacks until about 7 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock in the evening, and then I'll stop after that. So my eating window is, although it's 5 hours between the first and last meal, it's probably 7 hours by the time I'm finished digesting my food. So, and I'm not so obsessed about the number of meals. I'm obsessed about the content, the macronutrient content, protein, fat, carbohydrates, and the micronutrient content, and some of the things like probiotics and things like that as well. And I think the idea is, I don't mind whether you eat 3, even 4 meals a day, but just make sure that under no circumstances that eating window is not more than 12 hours a day, because then you will put on an awful lot of weight. And as I said, the only people who should be eating more regularly are people who are particularly underweight or have got medical conditions like diabetes and things like that.
Okay, exactly. So, yes, so thank you very much, Professor, for that talk today. Like, we've covered a lot of topics, from esophagus, from gastroesophageal reflux disease, up to cancer prevention. I'm really happy that you've shared with us the content of your book. Like, I mean, what it covers, what topics it covers. Like you said, you see, guys, like how extensive is that, right? What you've covered in your book, from psychology, as you said, to this micronutrients, the fasting, the physical activity. This is like very, very impressive, and I'm really happy that like really world-renowned specialists, right, are talking about that holistic approach. And that, you know, what you've said, everything in moderation, that there is no one particular good diet.
No one golden bullet. That's perfect.
Yes, exactly.
What a lovely summary.
Oh, that's a nice, I haven't heard one golden bullet, you say? Yeah, okay. There is no one golden bullet, yeah? I will tell it, I will repeat it again. So thank you very much, Professor, for the talk today. And hopefully when the book will be published, will it be available to order outside the UK, because you are based in UK?
Yes. Through Amazon, yes. Yeah.
Through Amazon, perfect. And is the autograph available? Will be the autograph available?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I'd love to. Thank you. And thank you very much. I want to thank you too, because as a dietitian, I think it's important that I also say that you, as a dietitian, you've got a very open mind about things, and that's what I just want to encourage the listeners and viewers to think about. You want to go to someone who's not going to be didactic. You want to go to someone who's actually going to listen to you as an individual client and actually work out a bespoke thing that suits you, rather than trying for them to give you their solution. They want to help you to find your solution.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the nice words for me. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really also impressed by your open-mindedness as well, and your extensive knowledge. Thank you for this talk today, and thank you guys for attending this power walk today, and hopefully see you next time. If you would like to share with us your thoughts on the topic today, please write it in the comments, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Dzięki za wspólny spacer. Partnerem strategicznym PowerWalk jest platforma MultiLife od Benefit Systems. Masz pytanie? To zadaj je w komentarzu. To był PowerWalk, Twój podcast w ruchu. Razem idziemy małymi krokami ku wielkim zmianom.